My name is Evan Schout, and I am a recovering accountant. So, yes, I'm a CPA, but none of what you're going to see today is going to be numbers, because I'd like all of you to stay awake for the presentation this morning. But I am going to piss you off right off the start. I want everybody up out of your chairs. Everybody who is not a primary producer, you got to sit down. Everybody who's an entrepreneur in the room, sit down. You played right into my hand. All the producers, sit down. Okay. The majority of what I'm going to talk about in the first presentation today is how everybody who did not sit down to the entrepreneur question was 100% incorrect. As an entrepreneur, you own your own business, you start your own business, you build your own business. Any of you farmers build your own business, start your own business, run your own business? You're all entrepreneurs. Sorry. Now, if we were in Canada, I would have also asked the question of the richest 1% in the room, sit down. And nobody ever sits down. In Canada, our government says the richest 1% own $1 million in investments and make $200,000 a year. It's $250,000 worth in North Dakota. How many of you guys own enough land to cover that $1 million investment? Most likely. $200,000 at $50 an acre. I mean, that's Canadian, so like $10 American. How many would make 200,000 Canadian? The majority of farms here would. You are the richest 1% if you were in Canada, and you're all entrepreneurs. That is where I'm taking this today. How does the wrong button work and not the right button work? There we go. Okay. Life of an entrepreneur. We like to look at guys like Elon Musk and a whole bunch of others and say, pretty easy, right? They were broke, they're billionaires. Good enough. Anybody who's a farmer in the room, which obviously a lot of you are, this is the life of an entrepreneur. So, I'm glad he actually didn't do my bio, because I usually start this presentation by going through my life. Number 1, grew up on a farm. Show of hands, best life growing up on a farm? 100%. Loved it. Still love it. Number 2, just about to graduate high school. Son, there's no money in farming, get a job. Okay. Back then there was no money in farming. So, go to university. Number 3, convocate with an accounting degree, CPA. Number 4, I hate office work. Don't get me wrong, dumb a profession to go into if you hate office work, but I hate office work. Number 5, it's really high. Moved back to the farm, full-time farmer, 4,000 acre grain farm in central Saskatchewan. Number 6, spring of 2010. Half the crop didn't get seeded, way too wet. Now I gotta be careful. My wife's not in the room. Also the year I got married. So, we'll leave that one where it is. Number 7, built a house out of the farm. Now for the curveball. Number 8, I have 2 young sons, both with autism. Central Saskatchewan, not a good place to raise special needs kids, so made the choice to sell. So, went from accountant to farmer, back to accountant. Number 9, worked my way up, got my partnership papers. A day later, one of my best friends decides to make a really cruel joke and offer me a job. Number 10, now I have it as a low, but it turned out it wasn't. I took the road less traveled. I went into business with one of my best friends, Christian Hebert. Guess what? Number 11, I'm a farmer again. So, I'm a CPA, I run a consulting company, I run a coaching program, but I'm gonna tell you that I'm a farmer because I own shares in Hebert Grain Ventures, and I'm back where I started. Okay, so, back to the entrepreneurial side. Who here has a New Year's resolution? Love it. I hate them. A, because the chance of achieving it, probably pretty low. This is the reason why, as entrepreneurs, which everybody here is, we always overshoot 1 year and undershoot 10. Example I like to use is what we call the R factor. R factor is goal setting. Now, nobody roll their eyes. This is agriculture, but yes, we do goal setting. So, if I pose the question, and I use the example of seeding 24 hours because that's what our farm does, and when I post it on Twitter, I get the most hate, so I love bringing it to farm shows. We seed 24 hours. Now, if your goal was to seed 24 hours, and I told you it was the goal, what are you going to tell me? Too cold, too dark, too dangerous, not enough people, nobody wants to work a night shift, everything negative, okay? Now, if I repose the question and say, 10 years later, we're still in this room, you've been seeding 24 hours for 10 years. How'd you do it? Somebody throw something out. How would you do it? Front table, come on. Oh, we got a quiet crowd. I'm gonna make you stand a lot more if nobody says anything. All right, light bars, more labor, shift implementation, more logistics crew, safety processes. We have been seeding 24 hours since 2009. It's how you pose the question. And the reason they call it R factor is R plus E equals O. R is the reaction, E is the event, O is the outcome. Everybody always focuses on E. What's the event? 10 years, I want to be rich. Does that do anything for you? If you focus on the R, I'm rich in 10 years, how did I get there? That's a goal. Okay? Oh. Now you got to fix that, guys. Perfect. Change is constant, dream big, and innovate fast. Henry Ford was the one that says, if you always do what you always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Okay? So, story on this one. Who here knows what a fiber trailer is? Show of hands. It's a really fancy spray trailer that costs a fortune. Now, we decided it was going to increase efficiency on the farm. We bought one 3 years ago. I'm the CFO for Hebert Grain Ventures. They had to run it by me. Yes, it's going to work. Buy it. I went down 2 weeks before seeding, walked into the shop, and that brand new fiber trailer was torn apart. Welds cut, units off the trailer, everything you can understand. Pardon my language, I said, what the hell? Well, we got it into the shop, our two mechanics didn't like it. They said there's way better ways to do it. So they tore it apart and rebuilt it. That, to me, change is constant, dream big and innovate fast. Even though it was the #1 spray trailer on the market, did everything we wanted it to do, it was not good enough. Okay? Now, to today's presentation, this is the concept. Doing nothing at all versus making small, consistent efforts. Okay, if you take one thing from all of today that I present, write down 2 names. Dr. Danny Kleinfelter, and you can forget about my business partner. Kleinfelter is a professor at TPAP. He is also one of my top mentors. He's also the reason our farm operates the way it does. My business partner went to TPAP in 2009 and came back with a checklist. It's a checklist they give out the first day of TPAP, which is the Texas A&M Executive Program for Producers, and they do it on purpose. They give out a checklist, they say, fill it out with what your farm has actually accomplishing right now. The reason they do that is because TPAP's an expensive course, supposed to be some of the top producers, and everybody fails the checklist. So if you have an ego, day 1, you feel like crap. Now, the other goal of it is that over the next 2009 to 2022, My business partner spent every single year trying to check boxes off that checklist. I have a job because a box on that checklist he wanted to get checked off. That was the goal of the farm. That's the goal of an entrepreneur. So, why was Danny Kleinfelter so profound? He used your American data and found that top 25% of farms were only 5% better than the rest. Baseball analogy, difference between a 300 hitter and a 250, one extra hit every 20 at-bats. So I'm not going to stand up here and tell you to be profound and make massive changes to your operations. I'm going to say make small changes, because a whole bunch of small changes have a compounding effect. Next slide. All right. Hard Red Spring, because it is the Hard Red Spring Conference. Now again, I apologize, these are Canadian numbers. So again, 50% inflated. So, 60 bushel wheat crop, $8, because I hate using today's price, because I still think we're gonna see a drop sometime, so I like coming back to the 10-year averages. In Western Canada, this is the 10-year average for all of these costs. 60 bushel times 8, $480 per acre. 10-year average, that's the revenue. Crop inputs, $210, fixed cost, $220, net earnings, $50 per acre. So in Western Canada, $50 per acre is the average 10-year profit. Okay, so how's the 5% rule work? Let's say you wake up and you cut 5% off your costs. Not monumental, not go sell a combine, 5%. That would net us $72 an acre instead of 50. Not bad. Okay, let's go the other way. Let's say we do yield. 5% is 3 bushel on that 60, 3 bushel an acre, $74. Okay, let's not do yield, let's do price. We market just a little bit better, 40 cents. Not $2, not $3, not the high, 40 cents. $74. Now it gets interesting. Let's do yield and price. Let's say we grow just a little bit better yield and market just a little bit better. 99. Well, we've gone this far, we might as well keep going. Let's say we cut costs by 5% and do both those other things. $121 an acre over 50. Year one, okay, we had a good year, great. Now, let's do this over a long term. So 5,000 acre farm, go over 10 years, those 5% changes we talked about, and you're gonna get an 8% return on your equity, which means you reinvest it, you don't go buy the Malibu boat or the cabin or the brand new 3/4 ton truck. What's it mean? Over 5 years, the difference goes from 1.4 to 3.5. You make $2 million more, doing 5% better. Over 10 years, $5 million better. 5,000 acre farm, $5 million better, being 5% better. That is the 5% rule. Okay, why is 5% important? So, my old accounting firm that I was part of decided that they wanted to get into data analytics. So what they did is they pull a whole bunch of data from the farms, and what they found was the top 25% of producers have profits of about $100 an acre more than the bottom 75. 90% of that is in gross revenue. So, you heard me say cut costs. Anybody in the room hear me say cut crop inputs? No. The reason you don't cut crop inputs is because right now, based on 80,000 years of farm data that we have through some of the programs I use up in Canada, I can legitimately tell you that for every dollar input you put in, you make $2.45 revenue. So when I said cut cost by 5%, if the first guy in the room said, I gotta cut my fertilizer back, please don't. Trim the fat, keep the muscle. The fat is every X9 combine, every 80-foot drill, every additional man. Those are fixed costs. That is where you cut. Okay, so why does it matter? So again, sorry for the Canadian data, but this is the average Western Canada farm over the last, sorry, 17 is the latest, but over the last 10 years. Costs have gone up 277%. That nice little green line, that's net income. You guys draft your own conclusions to that slide, but you guys have way more risk farming today than you did 15 years ago. Most dangerous phrase in agriculture, we've always done it this way. So, North Dakota, I'm just over the border. I can use a hockey analogy, I'm assuming. Wayne Gretzky, famous quote, reason he was better than everybody else was because he went to where the puck was going to be, not where the puck was. Strategy. So, I've sat up here and said be 5% better. Anybody in the room go, okay, the CPA said be 5% better. How the hell do I do it? Okay, so I'm going to give some solutions today. Number one, working capital. What we've seen with input prices and cash volatility in commodity markets, working capital is king. Everybody says cash is king. When I get to number two, I'm going to tell you why cash is not king. Working capital is king. Working capital is the difference between current assets, what you're going to sell in the next year, current liabilities, what you got to pay in the next year. It's essentially your treasure chest. Reason it's important, working capital allows you to sell grain when you want, not when you have to. It allows you to buy inputs when you want, not when you have to. On our farm, we bought inputs in June last year, and by December, remember, massive farm, we had a $3 million difference between what we would have paid in June, or what we did pay in June versus what we paid in December. $3 million gain that goes straight to margin. If you ask me where you want to reinvest, which lots of farms do on the consulting side, should I expand land? Should I buy equipment? What should I do? Make more margin. And the way you make more margin is by using your working capital to sell grain when you want and buy inputs when you want. Number two, accrual versus cash. Now, I realize when I come across the border, cash accounting is used a lot more in the US than it is in Canada, but I got a story. So, as CFO, I'm in charge of the bank balance. December 28th, Christian, my business partner and owner of the farm, is in Florida with his kids. I get a message from the bank that we're overdrawn. To be frank, guys, we have a $10 million operating line. And it's December. How in the hell are we overdrawn? Well, because we bought $8.5 million worth of inputs in June for the year after. That's why cash is not king. My richest farms with the best working capital still don't have cash. You're sitting on a boatload of cash? Great. You are in charge of your working capital, you're doing great. Now, interest rates in Canada for working capital right now on our operating line, about 6.5%. Average return on equity last year on our farm was 24%. Do I care that I'm paying 6.5% interest when I'm making 24? No. It's a simple equation. Do I like paying interest? No. But if I can make a 24% return by paying interest, 100%. So cash is tight. Cash is always tight. Managing margins and logistics. How many people have pre-bought inputs for next year? Show of hands. How many people have sold grain for next year? That's what I like to see. Not because it's a good thing, but because it leads into my slide. So, managing margins is different than managing costs or managing price. So you have locked up half the equation. You bought your inputs. Good. I got lots of farms that come in and say, I bought my inputs, I'm in great shape for next year. What happens if canola went to 12 bucks and wheat went to 6? Have you locked anything? No. Managing margins is about doing both sides of the coin. You lock your inputs, you lock your grain, you've locked your profit. If you only do one half of the equation, you haven't done anything. Number 3 or 4. 4 R's, right place, right source, right time, right rate. My second presentation, I'm going to show you a slide, but I'm going to hint at it right now. Somebody in the crowd tell me, what's the percentage, and these are American stats, what is the percentage of farms that soil test right now? Somebody yell it out. How many? Okay. Anybody else got another guess? Come on, guys, can't be this quiet. Somebody throw it out. You can't be wrong. 10. Okay. Truth is, less than 50% of farms soil test. Less than 50% of farms use sectional control. Less than 50% of farms use variable rate. So, on the 4 R's of right place, right source, right time, right rate, in Canada right now we're having significant fights with policy, government policy on this stuff, 30% reduction if you guys have heard the stats. How as farmers can we fight back when we don't even do the simple things? Right? The data actually is not working in our favor. GPS took 12 years for 50% of the industry to take it. Took 12 years for a self-driving tractor and for us to see value in that. Variable rate and sectional control have been out since the 90s. We're 22 years in. We're still not there. Farm trials. HGV, we have a deal with John Deere. We do a significant amount of farm trials. Our goal is, if it works for 3 years straight, makes us an ROI, we implement it. So when I say farm trials, I don't mean we choose a new fertilizer, use it on every acre. We choose a new fertilizer, try it on a quarter, try it on another quarter the next year, and the third year, and if it works, gets implemented across the farm. Those are farm trials. Marketing, Dr. Cole. Show of hands, who's heard of the name Dr. Cole? I'm in the US. I assumed it was going to be high. Canada, it's much lower, because you guys are much better at marketing than Canada is right now. Agronomy side, I would say we're slightly ahead. Marketing side, you guys are light years ahead of us. Thank you to the Canadian Wheat Board. But, so on the marketing side, Dr. Cole says, you do not hit the highs. If you try to hit the highs, you will end up lower than the average. So, we sell for profit. We don't sell for the high so we can go into Coffee Row and tell the neighbors. We sell for profit. And the last one, risk management. Anybody in here today be able to tell me what the worst case scenario if North Dakota had a drought next year for their farm would be? If you leave here today, that's the one number I want you to know. In Canada, obviously our insurance products are slightly different than yours, but in Canada I can actually insure most farms to a profit. They can't lose. So the banks in here, hold up your hand if that would be a good thing to know. I'm guessing, yes. Next slide. Okay, my gross margin example. I love using the 5% rule, but when it, sorry for obviously the PowerPoint screwed up on this one, but what I used is I used a canola example, 40 bushel an acre. In Canadian numbers, if you'd have sold at the very high, which I just told you you can't, but if you had 25 bucks an acre instead of 18, okay? So because we needed cash flow, we sold at 18. We didn't have working capital. Difference is 1,000 bucks an acre to 720. Cost of inputs, I use sectional control, and I bought my inputs in June versus December. 100 bucks an acre difference. Again, I had working capital, allowed me to do it. 81% difference, 470 versus 850. Now, I came into this presentation today and I took his advice and I cut my fixed cost by 5%. 250 to 220, not a big difference. What's that mean? It means 186% difference in profit. If you had working capital, made the right decisions, and cut some costs. Now, on a 5,000 acre farm, that's $2 million difference profit last year. This is a real example. You could have sold at 25, the average sold at 18. You could have bought in June at 150, the average 250. You could have cut costs by 30 bucks. That's not a huge number. This is a real life example. Next. Okay, labor, power, machinery. How am I doing for time? Perfect. Okay. What you're going to notice about this presentation and the next one I do, guys, human resources. Number one issue in agriculture in Canada especially, probably in the US as well. It's also our number one strength on the farm because that's where we focus 90% of our time. Okay? Human resources Now, actually, I'm going to save that story for later. Sorry, I was going to tell a story, but I'm going to save it for later. It fits the next presentation better. Cost management. What does it mean when I say cost management? The biggest issue in agriculture is not new machinery. Don't get me wrong, I like looking over the fence at the neighbors and seeing brand new combine, brand new drill. But the biggest issue is quantity. So when I started farming, we were 4,000 acres. We had a 40-foot Borgo drill. Anybody bought a 40-foot drill lately? No, they don't make them anymore. I now have farms that do 8,000 acres with two 80-foot drills. This is the issue. Quantity of machinery versus quality. You'll see the example on the right. This is my 24-hour seeding example. This is why we do it. This is why most people don't like seeing it. 1 drill for humans. So we go 24 hours with one drill. $1 million cost of equipment, and sorry, made this presentation last year. It's probably like $1.5 million now. Amortization $150, principal and interest $230 and $47. Wages and salaries for 4 humans for that period is $30,000. My accrual expense $227,000 to run that drill in humans. $28 an acre. EBITDA cost, cash cost to run it, $32 an acre. Now, let's do it the other way. Let's run a 12-hour shift, 2 drills, 3 humans. Okay? $2 million equipment cost, which is $300,000 amortization, $460 principal, $95 interest, $22,500 wages and salaries because I've cut one person out. Accrual expense, $417,500, $52 an acre. Cash cost, $60 an acre. This is the why we run 24 hours. It's the quantity of machinery that is your largest cost, not the quality. The one on the left could be a brand new tractor, brand new drill. It doesn't matter because it's not going to be the same amortization cost as 2 units. Oh, actually, sorry, stay there. Working in the versus on the business. So I am a coach at what we call Farmer Coach, which is one of our programs up in Canada. Reason I do it is that the majority of farms are so busy on day-to-day that they never actually work on the business. So, show of hands, who here is the lead operator on their business? Who here is the CEO of their business? Who here is the janitor of their business? You get where I'm going with this? Okay? Working in versus on. And that ties back to the human resources, which will tie into the next presentation. Equipment optimization. So, good story with this one. We run 7 combines at harvest. So our lead combine operator, who we do have a lead, who does all the tech, goes into all the units, does all of that stuff, comes to us at supper time, says, John Deere guy's been riding with me all day. I have the combine set perfect. Loss ratio, everything. It's running perfect. Great. When'd you find out? Well, 1:30 we got it set. It's been going good all afternoon. Did you tell the other 6 combines? Nope. Okay. Love the initiative. Hate that you just cost me 6 combines worth of efficiency. That is equipment optimization. Change is constant. We've covered perfection versus logistics. So, on the perfection side, if you think you are leading the pack, I promise you somebody else is kicking your ass. Promise you. There will be some farmer in the world that is doing better than you are at whatever you think you're doing good at. Continuous learning. And the last one, rugged individualism. Obviously, one of the guys before me was talking about mental health in agriculture. This is the issue. As farmers, we are really good as independent operators. We like to win by ourselves, and we like to lose by ourselves. That is the issue. This is why I run a coaching program. This is why we have peer groups. Rugged individualism is you on your own, when if everybody in this room shared their best practices, the industry itself would be further ahead. Okay, self-managing farm. So, story behind this, I was sitting with the three, what I would call the most progressive and largest farms in Western Canada. We were at a hemp conference in Calgary, and we decided to do a little whiteboarding. How many people in the crowd want to leave their farm to their kid, the next generation? That's the plan. Okay, those same guys that held up their hand. If something happened to you today, would that farm still run tomorrow for that kid? That's the question. So, when I say self-management, everybody always goes to, you know what? I like running my own combines. I like doing my stuff. I don't want to just sit at a desk. I agree. But self-management is the fact that these three large farms all said that they were going to build their farm for their 10-year-olds, because all three of them got 10-year-old sons. And all three of them, if they died on the plane ride home, that farm sells in the next 12 months, probably 5. This is the reason for self-management. Now you can go through all these things. These are just certain check boxes. Next slide. These are the ones that matter. So, when I talk about human resources, I get a lot of farms when I public speak that say, we're 4,000 acres, father-son operation. We don't have human resources. Human resources is not third party. Human resources is people working with people. Father-son's in the room. Is it always easy? Do you argue? Do you agree on everything? Welcome to human resources. So, why is it important? Okay. Who here started farming between the ages of 18 and 25? Okay. So, let's look at the graph. 25. Now, I would love for this room for me to say 55 is retirement. It's agriculture, so the graph probably doesn't go far enough. But if retirement was 55, that is the most time you have the opportunity to spend with your kids. If you're working 3,000 hours because you are the CEO, CFO, operator, janitor, whatever the title is, you're wasting the best years of your life. And I don't say waste because you are building a business, but from a family perspective, it's waste. The other one, 25 to 55. Now this one's interesting because it actually increases after. So if you spend 30 years with your spouse and the only conversation you have is hello in the morning and goodbye at night, and when you retire, you're going to spend 90% of your time with them. Anybody see an issue? No? Anybody going, yeah, that's my life? Next. Okay, land building finance. So these are the last costs I want to cover, and I know I'm running short on time, so I'm going to speed. So, succession transition. I could go on for hours, guys. I'm probably one of the top 5 issues I get asked about in agriculture. The one thing I want you to remember, who here runs a diversified operation? Okay, I got 3 hands. I'm gonna call bullshit, because everybody in this room runs a diversified operation. Reason is, who here owns land? Hand up. Who here puts money back into their farm? Hand up. All right. All of you are diversified operations. You are a farmer, real estate owner, and an investor. And you're going to say, no, that's bullshit, that's farming. No. Could you rent your land out? Yes. Totally independent of farming. That's real estate. Could you put your money into another place? Could you put it in Berkshire Hathaway? Could you put it in another place? Yes. So, but you choose to put your money back in the farm. That's investing. Reason that's important is when succession and transition occurs, we need to remember that. Retirement is a right. I don't believe in gifting to the next generation. I believe the next generation works for what you guys did. You had to build your operations. If you want their motivation to be the same as yours, they got to build theirs. They start at labor. And this little pretty graphic, you're going to see it again later. That is the life source or life path of a farmer. Older guys in the room, you started as an employee probably, right? With your dad. Then you made the decisions. Then you bought land. Then you put your money back in. Now, of the older guys in the room, How many have transitioned the farm and are now back to being an employee? How many are just running a piece of machinery? This is the life cycle of a farmer. Son takes over, dad goes back to less responsibility, doing what he loves, sitting in a combine. The shift, equity to management. The reason I say this is, over the last 20 years, farming has become really good. Land value is up, equity is up. Equity used to be the telltale sign of a successful farm. Now, when times are tough, that changes. Why does that change? It's because bad management with lots of equity still dwindles the equity. So, going into 2023, I would literally be able to tell you that the biggest difference in agriculture now is management. Strong managers have strong farms. Weak managers might still look like strong farms. They're living off dad's equity. Interest rate risk. Obviously, you guys have the same rate hikes that we have. It's supposed to soften, hopefully. But who in the room here remembers 20% interest rates? So is 6.5 really that bad? Welcome to reality, guys. Now, don't get me wrong, I think it's still going to come back a bit. Is it going to hit 2% like we had? No, it's not. Now, over the last 4 years, hold up your hand if you restructured your debt. That worries me. The reason that worries me is that we had the lowest interest rates if you look over the last 50 years. Every farm in here should have had their hand up. Because if you could have restructured your debt, right now, our 10-year loans are at 1.7%. So literally, we have zero interest rate risk for the next 10 years. That's what you could have done 2.5 years ago. Can't do that no more. And the last one, storage versus margin. So, welcome to logistics. Last year, I'd like to say we were just brilliant and bought all our inputs in June because it was the best financial decision we made. We're not that smart. But what we did know is that the year before, we got shorted on Liberty. So I want everything at home. So we have 110% of our fertilizer. We have all of our chemical sitting in storage at home right now. Now, you're going to say, that's not possible if you don't have the storage. I agree. That's why infrastructure is one of our top 5 goals. Make profit, reinvest in land, reinvest in infrastructure. Because if I have the chem sheds or I have the fertilizer sheds, we bought in June, we didn't have to pay till October. Reason we did that as retailers, what do they want to do? They want to get through their inventory. Honestly, having storage is almost more important than paying the bill. Just a little trick. Next. Okay, this is StatsCan data, but I'm assuming the US isn't far off based on the demographic data. Reason all this succession transition stuff is becoming an issue is the average age of a farmer in Saskatchewan right now is 65. 80% of our land is going to trade hands in the next 10 years. That doesn't mean sale, but it does mean it's going to transition to children or third-party sale. Think there's opportunities in agriculture? 100%, even at 6% interest. Next. Okay, last 2 slides, because I know I am tight on time, but these are the TPAP 6 philosophies. Sorry, 7 philosophies. Number 1, true competitive advantage. The true competitive advantage, as Brett Welsh said, is the ability to change and adapt. You are in one of the most volatile industries in the world. It's not just the luck of the draw, it's how quickly you can change and adapt. Strategic management. Hold of hands. Who here has a strategic plan for their farm? On paper. Get one. You think Walmart has a strategy? Yes? No? Man, you guys are quiet this morning. Yes, Walmart has a strategy. I promise you that. You guys run multi-million-dollar operations. And I know it's hard to hear because as farmers, you are very humble. You run multi-million-dollar businesses. And you're doing it without a strategy. That's not right. Analyzing. So, who here's heard the name Kimberly-Clark? Perfect. U.S. business. Used to be a paper mill. Paper mill was actually their #1 revenue source. It was 90% of their income. New CEO comes in. First thing he says is, you know what? I think we should go into consumer brands. Well, 90% of our income is paper. Yeah, but paper's going to be gone. Board of directors almost fired him. Meanwhile, the company created something called Kleenex. How many paper mills are left in the world? How much Kleenex did we use over COVID? Now, at the time, crazy idea. Analysis-wise, smartest guy in the room. Learning organizations. So in Canada, we have a whole bunch of grants that come for education. We use probably 100 to 200,000 worth of dollar grants for education. How many of you guys have employees or sons working with you? How many times do you put them through classes or continuous learning activities? Okay, other industries. Do you think they train their managers? Yeah. Do their employees go to HR training? Ethics training? Yep. We need to get there, especially in Canada for us because the government pays for it. And if there's programs like that down here, please do it. Continuous management improvement. Same thing. And I'll go into it a little more depth when I do the next talk, but we are always improving. Timing. The difference between, and I've said it a million times today, top 25, bottom 75 is timing. When you buy your inputs, when you sell your grain, when you seed your crop, it's timing. And the future belongs to those that have the ability to take opportunities, being set up for the next opportunity that's going to walk through your door. Next slide. Now, these are ours. And you're going to notice they're a little fancy wording and they sound like quotes. Welcome to my business partner. This is how he talks. So, positivity and teamwork allow common people to achieve uncommon results. We are highly HR. Best way to have the future you want is to create it. You guys own the company. You're in charge. Might as well build something you want. My business partner's line is that he wants to build something that will give him the ability to send his son to Harvard. But he also wants to build something cool enough that when Google or Morgan Stanley or Berkshire Hathaway tries to recruit his son, Hebert Grain Ventures is in the mix. Can't is not an option, it's a challenge. We combined on December 23rd, barley swaths at 2 a.m. Can't is not an option, it's just a challenge. If it's not broke, you haven't looked hard enough. Goes back to if you think you're perfect, somebody else is kicking your ass. Goes back to my fiber story. There's always ways to improve. The most dangerous phrase in agriculture is we've always done it this way. This is what holds back the majority of farms from doing anything I told you today. It's not the way agriculture works. Welcome to the 20th century. Last slide. Okay, and to go back to mental health, guys, because I end most of my presentations with this slide, because it is important, especially in Western Canada, and obviously down here it's an issue as well. Please remember this. As rugged individuals, you guys are way harder on yourselves. Nobody else is watching. That's all I got for this one.